The signal from the silent frontier. The outer frontier of the Aurelian Arm was a place the Galactic Empire preferred to forget. Official maps called it the periphery, a stretch of star systems where trade routes faded into darkness and patrol ships rarely ventured. To most Imperial citizens, it was simply the edge of civilization. Commander Velrian Keth of the Imperial Observation Station Thalos had spent 11 years watching that darkness. Thalos Station orbited a dim blue star called Mura 9, positioned at the border between Imperial territory and the so-called Sol Exclusion Zone. The exclusion zone had been established decades earlier after a disastrous first contact with a young species called humans. Officially, the Empire declared humanity primitive, unpredictable, and unworthy of integration. Unofficially, they were afraid. Velrian sat in the command chamber staring at the starfield beyond the observation glass. A silent sea of distant suns flickered like scattered dust across the void. Lieutenant Saveth entered the chamber carrying a data tablet. Commander, long-range sensors have picked up something unusual near the exclusion boundary. Velrian barely looked up. Another pirate fleet? Negative, sir. Saveth hesitated. The signal pattern does not match any known vessel. That finally got Velrian's attention. Display it. The holoscreen ignited above the console. A cluster of red markers appeared at the very edge of the map. Velrian leaned forward. How many contacts? Saveth swallowed. We cannot determine exact numbers yet. But preliminary scans estimate, thousands. Velrian felt a cold ripple run through his spine. Thousands of ships did not move quietly through space unless they wanted to be seen. Or unless they wanted someone to panic. Increase sensor resolution. The station's quantum array hummed to life. Slowly the blurry markers sharpened into recognizable shapes. Then the room went silent. Those are not pirate ships. No one needed to say it aloud. The vessels were massive. Sleek, armored, and organized in perfect formation. Each ship carried a design unlike anything produced by the Empire. Angular hulls. Rotating gravity rings. Deep blue engine signatures. Human. Velrian whispered the word like it might summon a nightmare. Human fleet confirmed, Saveth said quietly. Velrian stared at the projection. The Empire believed humanity had been isolated within the Sol system for nearly 70 years. Their technology was considered decades behind Imperial standards. But the fleet approaching the border told a very different story. Activate deep scans. The sensors pulsed again. Results appeared one by one. Energy signatures exceeding Imperial battleships. Shield matrices more complex than Imperial carrier defenses. And something else. Weapons arrays that stretched across entire hull segments. Saveth looked pale. Commander, those are not defensive ships. Velrian nodded slowly. No. They were not. These ships had been built for war. A lot of war. He zoomed the map outward. The fleet stretched across nearly half a light year, moving in layered formations that suggested careful tactical planning. This was not a patrol. It was an armada. A human armada. Why now? Velrian whispered the question to himself. The Empire had not attacked Earth directly. They had simply quarantined it, cutting humanity off from trade and exploration. It had seemed like the safest solution. Ignore them. Let them remain isolated. But humanity had clearly not remained quiet. Saveth broke the silence. Commander, we are receiving a transmission. Velrian raised an eyebrow. From the fleet? Yes, sir. Direct signal. No encryption. That was strange. Most military forces used complex encryption protocols. But this signal was completely open. Broadcast it. The holoscreen flickered. A human figure appeared. She stood in the center of a command bridge surrounded by glowing control panels. Her dark uniform carried a silver insignia shaped like a star surrounded by wings. Her voice was calm. This is Admiral Lyra Tanaka of the United Human Defense Coalition. Velrian exchanged a glance with Saveth. United Human Defense Coalition. The Empire had no record of such an organization. Admiral Tanaka continued. To the leadership of the Galactic Empire. This message is being broadcast to all Imperial listening posts. Velrian felt his stomach tighten. Humanity had always been unpredictable. But this level of confidence was new. For 70 years your empire has restricted humanity from exploring the galaxy. You declared us dangerous and isolated our civilization behind an exclusion barrier. Tanaka paused. Her eyes seemed strangely steady. During those 70 years we did exactly what you expected. We stayed home. But while the galaxy forgot us, we learned. The holoscreen shifted to show the vast human fleet behind her. Rows upon rows of starships drifted in disciplined formation. Some ships were larger than Imperial dreadnoughts. Others moved like swift predators. Tanaka's voice returned. Humanity used isolation as an opportunity. We studied physics, engineering, diplomacy, and the history of galactic conflict. Valerian felt a growing unease. This speech sounded less like a threat and more like a lecture. A warning. Tanaka continued. We discovered something important. Empires eventually collapse. Not because they are weak, but because they forget why they exist. The transmission cut briefly to another visual. A map of Imperial territory. Across the stars small symbols appeared. War zones. Rebellions. Occupied worlds. Tanaka spoke again. Your empire has spent centuries expanding through conquest and control. Countless civilizations have been forced into obedience under Imperial authority. But power without responsibility always leads to fear. Valerian felt sweat forming on his palms. Humanity had clearly studied the Empire carefully. Then Tanaka delivered the line that froze the room. Today humanity returns to the galaxy. Not as a primitive species. Not as an isolated world. But as a united civilization. Behind her the fleet engines ignited brighter. Thousands of human ships shifting formation. Saveth whispered. Commander, they are accelerating. Valerian stared at the tactical display. The entire armada had begun moving toward Imperial territory. Tanaka spoke one final sentence. We are coming to end the age of empires. The transmission ended. The command chamber remained silent. Valerian finally exhaled. Send an emergency report to the Imperial High Council. Saveth nodded quickly. Message prepared, sir. Valerian looked again at the approaching fleet. Humanity had not simply survived their isolation. They had transformed it into preparation. And now the galaxy was about to discover what humans had been building in the dark. Valerian whispered to himself. The Empire is not ready for this. Outside the station windows the stars glowed cold and distant. And far beyond them, humanity's battle fleet continued its unstoppable approach. The Emperor's Emergency War Council. The imperial capital of Astrian Prime had not seen panic in centuries. For most citizens, the Galactic Empire appeared eternal. Its fleets controlled thousands of star systems. Its governors ruled distant worlds with absolute authority. And its military had crushed countless rebellions before they could grow into serious threats. But deep within the towering imperial citadel, fear had begun to spread. The High War Chamber was a circular hall carved from dark crystal stone. Massive holographic projectors floated above a central table displaying the entire known galaxy. Thousands of star systems glowed like scattered diamonds across the projection. Tonight, one section of the map pulsed red. The Sol Exclusion Zone. Emperor Kylian Var stood silently at the head of the chamber. He was a tall figure with silver hair and sharp eyes that had watched over the empire for nearly 3 decades. His reign had been marked by stability and expansion. Until now. The chamber doors opened. Grand Admiral Threx Vailron entered first, followed by several military commanders and intelligence officials. Behind them walked Director Saphira Morn of the Imperial Strategic Analysis Bureau. The Emperor spoke without turning. Report. Vailron stepped forward and activated the holographic map. Your Majesty, we have confirmed the information transmitted from Observation Station Thalos. The projection zoomed inward. Thousands of ship markers appeared along the Imperial frontier. Human vessels. The chamber fell into a tense silence. Minister Halvex of Colonial Affairs broke it first. Impossible. Humanity has been confined to their system for 70 years. Director Saphira Morn shook her head. Not confined, Minister. Isolated. The distinction mattered. Isolation allowed a civilization time. Time to adapt. Time to evolve. Admiral Vailron pointed to the fleet formation. Preliminary estimates indicate over 8,000 combat-capable ships. Gasps spread across the room. Even the Imperial Navy rarely assembled fleets of that size outside of full-scale war. And humanity had built this in secret. General Kydros, commander of the Imperial Defense Armies, leaned forward. How advanced are their vessels? Vailron answered carefully. Our scans indicate shield technology exceeding our own by at least 20% efficiency. Their propulsion systems appear to be hybrid quantum drives, significantly faster than standard Imperial engines. Minister Halvex shook his head in disbelief. That level of development should take centuries. Director Morn spoke quietly. Not if their entire civilization focused on technological advancement. The Emperor finally turned toward the holographic map. His expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp. What is their current trajectory? Valeron zoomed the projection again. The fleet was advancing toward the Orion Corridor, a strategic hyperspace route connecting the outer frontier with the inner empire. If they secure that corridor, Valeron explained, they will gain direct access to over 40 Imperial systems. General Kydros clenched his fists. Then we stop them there. He looked toward the Emperor. Authorize full mobilization. But Director Morn raised her hand. There is something else you should see. She tapped her data console. A new holographic screen appeared. It showed historical archives from the first contact with humanity 70 years earlier. An alien world filled with oceans and green continents. At the time, the Empire had sent diplomatic envoys to evaluate the species. The report from that mission had described humans as aggressive, curious, and dangerously creative. Minister Halvex scoffed. Creative does not build war fleets capable of threatening an empire. Morn's voice remained steady. Actually, Minister, creativity is exactly how such fleets are built. She displayed additional data. Human technological progress over the past 7 decades had followed an unusual pattern. Instead of developing slowly across many industries, humanity had focused intensely on several key areas: artificial intelligence, quantum engineering, and cooperative global governance. Admiral Valeron frowned. They unified their planet? Morn nodded. Completely. One government. One military command. One strategic objective. The room fell silent again. The Empire ruled through regional governors, noble houses, and semi-autonomous fleets. It was powerful but decentralized. Humanity, apparently, had taken a different path. General Kydros spoke again. Even if their fleet is large, they have never fought a galactic war. The Imperial Navy has centuries of battle experience. Valeron looked uncertain. Perhaps. But there is another concern. He expanded the tactical display again. Several smaller human fleets had appeared behind the main armada. Supply vessels. Engineering ships. Colonization transports. The realization spread slowly through the room. They are not just invading, Minister Halvex whispered. They are preparing to stay. Director Morn nodded. Humanity does not appear to be conducting a raid or demonstration. This is a full-scale expansion into Imperial territory. The Emperor walked slowly around the holographic table. For a long time he said nothing. Then he asked a simple question. Why now? No one answered immediately. Finally Morn replied. We believe humanity spent 70 years studying the Empire. Every conflict. Every political division. Every weakness. She pointed to several blinking markers on the map. Multiple Imperial sectors are currently experiencing unrest. Trade disputes. Border skirmishes. Local rebellions. The Emperor understood immediately. Humanity had chosen the exact moment when the Empire was most distracted. Strategically, it was a brilliant move. General Kydros slammed his hand on the table. Then we respond with overwhelming force. He turned to the Emperor. Deploy the 1st Armada and the 9th Defense Fleet to the Orion Corridor. Valeron hesitated. That would leave several core sectors lightly defended. Kydros did not care. Better to crush the human fleet now than fight them later inside Imperial space. The Emperor studied the map again. Thousands of red markers slowly moving forward. Humanity had announced their arrival openly. No stealth. No deception. Just a direct challenge. The Emperor finally spoke. Prepare the fleets. The generals nodded. But he raised a hand. However, we will not rush blindly into battle. The room grew quiet again. Director Morn looked curious. Your Majesty? The Emperor turned toward the large observation window overlooking the city of Astrian Prime. Millions of lights glittered across the night side of the planet. Civilization. Power. An empire built across centuries. Humanity claims they have come to end the age of empires, the Emperor said slowly. He looked back at the council. Before we fight them, I want to understand exactly what they believe they are replacing it with. Admiral Valeron frowned. You believe diplomacy is still possible? The Emperor shook his head. No. But understanding your enemy is always valuable. Especially when they have spent 70 years preparing for war. He pointed at the map. Dispatch reconnaissance drones to shadow the human fleet. I want every piece of information we can gather. Weapons capabilities. Command structure. Strategic patterns. Morn nodded. It will be done. The Emperor gave his final order. And summoned the Imperial armadas. Across the galaxy, the greatest war fleets in Imperial history began receiving mobilization commands. Massive dreadnoughts powered their engines. Carrier groups launched fighter wings. Defense networks activated along the Orion corridor. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire was preparing for a war against a single species. Back at Observation Station Thalos, Commander Velrian Keth watched the growing human fleet through his sensors. They continued advancing steadily toward Imperial space. Calm. Disciplined. Unstoppable. Velrian whispered quietly to himself. The hidden human strategy. 3 days after the emergency council on Astrian Prime, the Imperial reconnaissance fleet finally reached visual range of the advancing human armada. Captain Derek Solvin of the scout cruiser Valiant Edge stood inside the observation deck staring at the tactical display. The screen showed the human fleet as an enormous glowing wall stretching across space. Thousands of ships moved together in layered formations that resembled the structure of a living organism rather than a traditional military fleet. The Empire had faced massive armadas before. But nothing this organized. Officer Larithis adjusted the sensor arrays. Captain, we are now within long-range observation distance. Their sensors appear to be allowing our presence. Solvin frowned. Allowing? Normally, any fleet would attempt to hide its true capabilities from enemy scouts. Yet the human ships made no effort to conceal their signatures. It was as if they wanted the Empire to see everything. Activate deep scan protocols. The cruiser's quantum scanners began mapping the closest human vessels. Within seconds the data streams began flooding the bridge. Weapons arrays. Shield frequencies. Engine outputs. Then something unexpected appeared. Engineering Officer Tarin spoke first. Captain, these ships are not just war vessels. Solvin turned. Explain. Tarin expanded the structural blueprint of a human cruiser. Its hull contained modular compartments far larger than necessary for combat systems. Manufacturing bays. Agricultural chambers. Mobile laboratories. Entire ecosystems built inside starships. Solvin stared at the data. Why would a warship need agricultural systems? Tarin looked uncertain. It appears these vessels can remain operational for decades without external supply. A murmur spread across the bridge crew. Imperial fleets relied heavily on supply chains and logistical support. But humanity seemed to have solved that problem entirely. Captain Solvin realized something important. These ships were not just designed for battles. They were designed for journeys. Very long journeys. Lieutenant Varric suddenly leaned over his console. Captain, we are receiving a new transmission. Solvin raised an eyebrow. From the human fleet? Yes. Direct channel again. Same source as the previous broadcast. Admiral Lyra Tanaka. Solvin hesitated. The Empire had expected silence or hostility. Instead, the humans kept communicating openly. Display it. The holographic screen lit up. Admiral Tanaka appeared once again on the bridge of her flagship. Her expression remained calm. Imperial reconnaissance cruiser, this is Admiral Lyra Tanaka. Solvin stepped forward. Captain Derek Solvin of the Imperial Navy. He kept his voice firm. You are currently approaching sovereign Imperial territory with a massive military force. Tanaka nodded slightly. We are aware. Solvin expected threats or demands. Instead Tanaka asked a question. Captain Solvin, have your sensors finished analyzing our fleet? The question caught him off guard. They have begun their analysis. Tanaka smiled faintly. Then you have probably noticed something unusual. Solvin did not respond. Tanaka continued. Your empire believes humanity has arrived for war. She gestured behind her at the enormous fleet. But that is only part of the truth. Solvin crossed his arms. You deployed 8,000 warships. That usually indicates war. Tanaka's voice remained steady. War is sometimes necessary when systems become unstable. She paused. But humanity did not build this fleet simply to destroy the Empire. On the bridge of the Valiant Edge, several officers exchanged confused looks. Tanaka activated a new holographic display. A map of the galaxy appeared. But it was different from the Imperial version. Large areas were marked with strange energy patterns. Regions the Empire had labeled as unexplored space. Captain Solvin frowned. What are those markings? Tanaka answered calmly. Threat zones. Solvin felt a chill. Threat zones? Yes. She zoomed the map outward. Dozens of ancient structures appeared across the outer galaxy. Massive energy signatures buried deep within forgotten star systems. Tanaka explained. During humanity's isolation we began studying ancient signals hidden within galactic radiation patterns. We discovered something the Empire never noticed. Or perhaps chose to ignore. Solvin narrowed his eyes. Explain clearly, Admiral. Tanaka's tone grew more serious. The galaxy is not empty. Long before modern civilizations evolved, an unknown species constructed an enormous network of autonomous war machines. The bridge of the Valiant Edge fell silent. Tanaka continued. These machines were designed to activate when galactic technological development reached a certain threshold. Captain Solvin felt a growing sense of dread. You are suggesting some ancient defense system? Tanaka nodded. Exactly. And according to our calculations, that activation threshold will occur within the next 40 years. Solvin shook his head. The Empire has explored most of the galaxy. We have found no evidence of such machines. Tanaka looked directly into the camera. You have not found them because you never searched for them. Humanity did. She switched the hologram again. Images of gigantic dormant constructs appeared. Colossal mechanical structures drifting in deep space. Each one larger than a moon. Solvin's voice dropped. Where did you find those? Beyond the Perseus Rift. Outside Imperial exploration zones. Tanaka's voice softened slightly. Humanity realized something terrifying. When these ancient machines awaken, they will not care about empires, borders, or politics. They will simply erase every advanced civilization. Solvin stared at the hologram. If this information was true, the consequences were unimaginable. Then why approach the Empire with a battle fleet? He asked. Tanaka answered immediately. Because the Empire would never listen to a weak civilization. Only strength forces empires to pay attention. On the Imperial cruiser, silence returned again. Tanaka continued speaking. Humanity built this fleet to accomplish two objectives. First, dismantle the ancient machine network before it activates. Second, restructure the political system of the galaxy so civilizations cooperate instead of competing. Solvin almost laughed. You plan to restructure the entire galaxy? Tanaka did not smile. The alternative is extinction. Captain Solvin looked again at the massive human armada surrounding his small scout cruiser. Ships designed not only for war but for survival. Mobile ecosystems. Self-sustaining civilizations traveling through space. Humanity had not spent 70 years preparing for conquest. They had been preparing for something far larger. Solvin spoke quietly. Does the Empire know about this threat? Tanaka shook her head. Not yet. But they will soon. She leaned closer to the camera. Captain Solvin, in 2 days our fleet will reach the Orion corridor. Your armadas are already gathering there. Solvin felt tension build in his chest. Yes. Tanaka's voice remained calm. We hope they choose cooperation. But if they choose war instead? She glanced out the window of her flagship at the endless rows of human warships. Humanity will defend its mission. The transmission ended. Captain Solvin remained standing in silence for several seconds. Lieutenant Varric finally spoke. Captain, should we report this information to the High Council? Solvin slowly nodded. Immediately. As the scout cruiser turned away from the human armada, the enormous fleet continued moving forward through the darkness of space. But now the situation felt very different. This was no longer simply an invasion. It was a warning. And somewhere beyond the borders of known space, ancient machines were waiting to awaken the first battle of the Orion Corridor. The Orion Corridor was one of the most important hyperspace routes in the entire Galactic Empire. It connected the outer frontier systems to the heavily populated inner sectors. Thousands of cargo ships and military convoys traveled through it every day, making it the economic artery of imperial expansion. Now it had become a battlefield. Across the corridor, the Imperial Armada waited. More than 4,000 warships had gathered in layered defensive formations. Massive dreadnoughts floated like armored mountains in space, surrounded by carriers, cruisers, and swarms of interceptor fighters. Grand Admiral Threx Veilron stood on the command bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominion Crown. The massive vessel was nearly 12 kilometers long and bristled with enough weapons to level entire planets. Through the panoramic command window, Veilron could see the growing glow of approaching engine signatures in the distance. The human fleet was almost here. Commander Elira Tovan approached his side. Admiral, long-range sensors confirmed the human armada has entered the outer boundary of the Orion Corridor. Veilron nodded slowly. Display full tactical projection. The holographic battlefield appeared in the center of the bridge. Two enormous forces now faced each other across open space. On one side, the fleets of the Galactic Empire. On the other, the advancing human armada led by Admiral Lyra Tanaka. Despite the difference in ship designs, the scale of both forces was terrifying. But there was something strange about the human formations. They were not arranged in traditional attack patterns. Instead, their ships formed several rotating clusters that seemed to adjust position constantly. Commander Elira studied the display. They are changing formation every 40 seconds. Valeron frowned. Adaptive battle geometry. He had read about the concept in theoretical military papers, but no civilization had ever successfully implemented it in large-scale combat. Until now. The bridge officer suddenly spoke. Admiral, incoming transmission from the human flagship. Valeron folded his arms. Put it through. Admiral Lyra Tanaka appeared on the main display. Her bridge looked calm, almost peaceful compared to the tense atmosphere of the Imperial Command Center. Grand Admiral Valeron, she said. I was hoping we could speak before unnecessary bloodshed begins. Valeron's expression hardened. You approach Imperial territory with the largest foreign armada in recorded history and speak of avoiding bloodshed? Tanaka replied calmly. We warned your empire that our mission is not conquest. Valeron gestured toward the surrounding fleets. Yet you arrive with weapons capable of destroying entire sectors. Because we expected resistance. The statement hung in the air. Valeron leaned forward slightly. Captain Solvan's report has been reviewed. Your claims about ancient machines remain unverified. Tanaka nodded. That is understandable. She activated a small hologram beside her. It showed a deep space image of a colossal mechanical structure drifting in darkness. One of the dormant machines humanity had discovered. Valeron studied the image carefully. Even from the limited transmission resolution, the structure was enormous. Tanaka continued. This is one of thousands scattered throughout the outer galaxy. When they activate, every advanced civilization will become a target. Valeron crossed his arms again. Convenient timing for such a discovery. Tanaka's tone remained steady. You do not have to believe us today. But you should consider something. She zoomed the hologram outward. Human exploration vessels had mapped dozens of ancient machine locations. If our calculations are correct, the activation sequence has already begun. A small indicator blinked on the map. One machine signature had recently emitted an energy spike. Commander Elira looked uneasy. Admiral. Valeron raised a hand. Silence. He looked directly at Tanaka. Even if your claims are true, you have no authority to invade Imperial space. Tanaka sighed quietly. Grand Admiral, humanity spent 70 years studying your empire. Your political divisions. Your expansion strategies. Your internal conflicts. Valeron did not like where this conversation was heading. Tanaka continued. Your empire has become too large and too divided to respond effectively to the coming threat. Valeron's voice grew colder. You presume to judge us? No. Tanaka shook her head. We simply analyzed the data. She gestured toward the enormous human fleet behind her. Humanity chose a different path. We unified our species and focused every resource on preparation. That preparation has brought us here today. Valeron remained silent for a moment. Then he gave his final answer. The Orion Corridor is sovereign Imperial territory. Withdraw your fleet immediately or be treated as hostile invaders. Tanaka's expression did not change. I was afraid you would say that. She leaned back slightly. Then we will defend our mission. The transmission ended. The bridge of the Dominion Crown erupted with activity. Admiral, enemy formations accelerating. Valeron watched the tactical display carefully. The human fleet began shifting into combat patterns. Hundreds of smaller vessels moved forward like hunting predators. Interceptor wings launching from carriers, Elira reported. Valeron nodded. Imperial fighter squadrons launch. Across the Imperial Armada, thousands of fighters burst from carrier bays and raced toward the approaching human craft. Within minutes the empty space between the two fleets filled with streaking engine trails. The first clash of the war had begun. Human interceptors moved with incredible precision. Instead of charging directly into combat, they formed rotating attack circles that constantly changed direction. Imperial fighters struggled to predict their movements. One by one the first laser bursts flashed across space. Explosions followed. On the Dominion Crown Bridge, tactical officers shouted updates. Human ships advancing in multiple vectors. Shields holding across primary battle lines. Valeron watched carefully. The real battle would not be decided by fighters. It would be decided by the capital ships. Moments later the first human cruisers entered firing range. Energy beams erupted from their hulls. Brilliant streams of light tore through space toward the Imperial formation. Return fire, Valeron ordered. The Orion corridor exploded into chaos. Massive weapon batteries from both fleets unleashed devastating barrages. Explosions lit the darkness as ships maneuvered violently to avoid incoming fire. Despite the intensity of the battle, something unusual quickly became clear. Human ships rarely fought alone. They moved in coordinated clusters of 3 or 4 vessels. When one ship took heavy fire, the others shifted instantly to protect it. Shield energy from multiple ships combined into shared defensive fields. Commander Elira looked stunned. They are merging shield matrices. Valeron stared at the display. The tactic allowed damaged ships to survive longer while maintaining offensive pressure. A brilliant adaptation. But Imperial firepower was still immense. Several human vessels finally exploded under concentrated bombardment. The Empire had drawn first blood. Cheers briefly erupted on the Dominion Crown Bridge. Then the situation changed. Admiral, new human vessels entering the battlefield. Valeron frowned. From where? The tactical officer zoomed out. Dozens of previously hidden human ships had emerged from behind the main formation. But these ships looked different. Their hulls carried enormous circular structures. Commander Elira's eyes widened. Those are not warships. Engineering vessels. Before Valeron could ask what that meant, the new ships activated their equipment. Massive construction beams shot outward into empty space. Within seconds, enormous metallic structures began assembling rapidly. Defensive platforms. Mobile fortresses. Valoran's expression darkened. They are building battle stations in the middle of the battlefield. Human engineering ships were constructing defensive structures faster than the Empire could destroy them. Each platform carried powerful shield generators and weapon arrays. Within minutes, the human fleet had established a forward defensive network. The battle was no longer just a clash of fleets. It had become a growing human stronghold inside the Orion corridor. Commander Elira whispered quietly. Admiral. Valeron did not respond. He simply watched the display. Humanity had not just come prepared for battle. They had come prepared to reshape the battlefield itself. And this was only the beginning, awakening in the dark. The battle in the Orion corridor had raged for nearly 8 hours. Across the vast hyperspace route, wreckage drifted through the void. Broken hull fragments, shattered fighter wings, and the silent remains of destroyed cruisers floated between the two fleets. Yet the most shocking development was not the destruction. It was the construction. Grand Admiral Threx Valeron stood on the bridge of the Dominion Crown watching the tactical display in disbelief. Human engineering ships continued building massive defensive platforms across the battlefield. Every time the Empire destroyed one structure, 2 more seemed to appear. Commander Elira Tovan adjusted the sensor resolution. Admiral, these platforms are not temporary defenses. Valeron turned. Explain. Elira expanded the structural scan on the central holographic table. The human platforms were far larger than they had first appeared. Beneath their outer armor were layers of modular compartments containing reactors, shield generators, weapon arrays, and docking ports. They were not simple battle stations. They were permanent installations. Valoran's voice grew quiet. They are building a fortress network inside the corridor. Exactly, Elira replied. At the current rate, they could establish a fully operational defense grid within 40 hours. That realization changed everything. If humanity secured the Orion corridor with permanent structures, Imperial fleets would lose control of one of the most important transportation routes in the galaxy. But there was another mystery. How were humans building these massive structures so quickly? Even the Empire's most advanced construction fleets would require weeks to assemble something of this scale. Yet humanity was doing it in minutes. Valeron spoke sharply. Increase focus on the engineering vessels. The sensors zoomed in on one of the strange construction ships. Unlike human warships, these vessels had enormous rotating rings surrounding their hulls. Energy surged through the rings as the ship projected powerful beams toward partially built platforms. Materials appeared almost instantly. Hull segments fused together at incredible speed. Commander Elira frowned. Admiral, the materials are not coming from supply ships. Valeron narrowed his eyes. Then where are they coming from? Elira tapped her console. Energy readings indicate the vessels are converting raw matter directly from surrounding space. Valeron blinked. Matter conversion technology had existed in theory for centuries. But no civilization had managed to use it on such a large scale. Yet humanity appeared to have perfected it. That meant their fleet could construct entire cities in deep space without relying on traditional resources. Elira whispered quietly. Their fleet is not just an army. It is an entire civilization traveling through space. Valeron felt a rare sense of uncertainty. Humanity had used their 70 years of isolation far more effectively than the Empire had imagined. But before he could respond, the bridge officer suddenly shouted, "Admiral, urgent transmission from Imperial Deep Space Observatory Theta 7. Valeron turned. "Patch it through." The holographic display shifted. A nervous scientist appeared on screen. Director Kelran Vose of the Imperial Astrophysics Division. "Admiral Valeron, we have detected something extraordinary beyond the Perseus Rift." Valeron frowned. "Explain." Vose activated a deep space scan. The image revealed a distant star system far beyond Imperial borders. In the center of the system floated a gigantic mechanical structure. It resembled the ancient machine humanity had shown earlier. But this one was different. It was glowing. Commander Elira felt her heart race. Energy readings increasing rapidly. Vose continued speaking. "Approximately 6 minutes ago, the structure began emitting high-frequency power surges." Valeron's stomach tightened. "Activation?" Vose nodded grimly. "Yes. The machine is waking up." Silence spread across the Dominion Crown Bridge. If the human claims were true, this was the beginning of the galactic crisis they had warned about. Valeron spoke carefully. "Can we determine its purpose?" Vose answered quietly. "Based on energy output and weapon architecture, it appears to be a planetary extermination platform." Elira stared at the screen. The machine was nearly the size of a small moon. And it was moving. Its outer shell unfolded slowly as massive weapon arrays extended outward. Ancient engines ignited with a cold blue glow. Vose continued. "Trajectory indicates the machine is leaving its dormant orbit. Destination unknown." Valeron felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Humanity had not been lying. Something ancient had begun to awaken in the darkness beyond the galaxy's mapped regions. But the Empire was still locked in battle with the only civilization that seemed prepared for the threat. Commander Elira spoke carefully. "Admiral, if more of these machines activate." Valeron finished the sentence quietly. "Then every civilization in the galaxy will be in danger." At that exact moment, another alert flashed across the bridge. "Admiral, human fleet requesting priority transmission." Valeron hesitated only briefly. "Accept it." Admiral Lyra Tanaka appeared once again on the main display. Her expression was serious. "Grand Admiral Valeron, I assume your observatories have detected the activation beyond the Perseus Rift." Valeron did not hide his frustration. "Yes." Tanaka nodded. "Then you now understand why humanity built this fleet." Valeron glanced at the tactical display where Imperial and human ships were still exchanging fire. "And yet we are fighting each other while the real threat awakens." Tanaka sighed softly. "That was never our intention." Valeron crossed his arms. "Then withdraw from the corridor and we can discuss cooperation." Tanaka shook her head. "We cannot withdraw." Valeron's voice sharpened. "Why not?" Tanaka gestured toward the massive construction platforms now forming a defensive network. "Because these structures are the first stage of a much larger plan." She expanded a new holographic map. It showed dozens of future construction points scattered across the galaxy. Humanity intends to build a network of defensive bastions capable of stopping the ancient machines. The Orion Corridor is the first node. Valeron stared at the map. "You plan to fortify the entire galaxy?" Tanaka nodded. "Yes. But we cannot do it alone." She looked directly at him. "Grand Admiral, humanity does not want to destroy the Empire. We want to save it. But if the Empire refuses to cooperate..." She paused. "Then humanity will move forward anyway." The transmission ended. Valeron remained silent for a long moment. Outside the Dominion Crown, the battle still raged. But far beyond the battlefield, in the silent darkness of deep space, the first ancient machine had already begun its slow journey toward the populated galaxy. And it would not be the last, the fall of the First World. The battle inside the Orion Corridor had slowed, but it had not stopped. Imperial warships and human vessels still exchanged fire across the growing field of human-built defense platforms. Explosions flashed across space as both sides maneuvered cautiously around the newly constructed structures. Yet the focus of the entire battlefield had shifted. Far beyond the corridor, something ancient had awakened. Grand Admiral Threx Valeron stood silently on the bridge of the Dominion Crown. The enormous tactical display before him showed two separate maps. One displayed the Orion Corridor battlefield. The other showed a distant star system beyond the Perseus Rift. The second map was the one everyone on the bridge was watching. Commander Elira Tovan spoke quietly. The machine has reached its first inhabited system. Valeron looked up. Which one? Elira expanded the star map. The system designation appeared. Helios 47. Valeron recognized the name immediately. Helios 47 was a mining colony under imperial protection. Nearly 8 million citizens lived on its primary world, extracting rare stellar minerals used in advanced reactor technology. It was not a military system. It was a civilian world. Sensor feeds from the Imperial Observatory began transmitting live images. The bridge lights dimmed as the massive holographic projection filled the command chamber. Helios 47's yellow star glowed at the center of the system. Orbiting it was the colony planet, a rocky world covered with industrial cities and mining complexes. And above it floated the ancient machine. Even on the holographic display, the structure was terrifying. It was larger than many moons, its surface covered with countless mechanical segments that slowly unfolded like petals of a metal flower. Gigantic weapon arms rotated outward. Energy surged through enormous conduits across its surface. Admiral Valeron felt a cold wave of realization. Humanity had been telling the truth. The machine began charging its primary weapon. A massive ring structure on its lower hull ignited with blinding light. Energy gathered slowly, pulling particles from space itself. Commander Elira whispered. That energy output, it could shatter the planet. Valeron clenched his fists. Open emergency channel to the Helios defense fleet. Moments later a desperate voice appeared through the communication system. This is Captain Orvan Ral of the Helios Defense Squadron. His face looked pale and shaken. Admiral, we have engaged the unknown construct but our weapons are ineffective. Behind him explosions flashed across his command bridge display. Imperial cruisers fired everything they had at the ancient machine. Laser cannons. Missile volleys. Heavy particle beams. None of it seemed to matter. The machine's shields absorbed every attack. Its weapon continued charging. Valeron spoke urgently. Evacuate the planet immediately. Captain Ral shook his head. It's too late. Civilian transports cannot clear orbit in time. Valeron watched the energy ring grow brighter. Millions of lives were about to disappear. Across the Orion Corridor battlefield, Admiral Lyra Tanaka received the same transmission. Her command bridge had fallen silent as her officers watched the disaster unfold. Commander Arjun Kale spoke softly. Admiral, we cannot reach Helios 47 in time. Tanaka knew he was right. Even at maximum speed, the human fleet would need several hours to reach the system. The ancient machine would fire long before that. The screen showed the final moments. The giant weapon ring reached full power. A beam of blinding white energy erupted downward. For a brief second, the beam connected space and planet like a pillar of light. Then Helios 47 shattered. The entire world fractured into burning debris that spread across orbit. Cities, oceans, continents, everything vanished in an instant. 8 million lives erased. The command bridges of both fleets fell silent. For the first time since the battle began, neither side fired. Everyone was staring at the same image. The destroyed world. Grand Admiral Valeron slowly lowered his head. The Empire had lost planets before. But never like this. Never so suddenly. Commander Elira spoke quietly. The machine is moving again. The holographic display showed the massive construct turning away from the ruins of Helios 47. Its engines ignited once more. New trajectory locked. Destination, the outer Imperial colonies. Valeron realized the horrifying truth. This machine would not stop. It would simply continue destroying system after system. And if humanity was correct, thousands more machines would eventually awaken. The Empire could not fight them alone. Valeron opened a direct channel. Contact the human flagship. Moments later Admiral Lyra Tanaka appeared on the screen again. Neither leader spoke immediately. Both had just witnessed the same catastrophe. Valeron finally broke the silence. 8 million civilians are dead. Tanaka nodded slowly. Yes. Her voice was calm but heavy. This is exactly what humanity discovered during our research. The machines were built for systematic extermination. Valeron looked at the wreckage of Helios 47 drifting through space. Then he asked the question that would change the war. What must the Empire do? Tanaka seemed slightly surprised by the words. But she answered immediately. Humanity has developed weapons capable of disabling these machines. But deploying them requires access to key hyperspace routes and construction zones across the galaxy. She displayed a new strategic map. Human defense bastions positioned at major travel corridors. Each one connected by a rapid response network. Valeron understood. Humanity's construction platforms were not just fortresses. They were part of a massive defensive grid designed to protect the galaxy. Tanaka continued. But this network will only work if multiple civilizations cooperate. Valeron looked back at the destroyed world on the screen. Helios 47 had been the first. But if nothing changed, it would not be the last. He spoke clearly. Admiral Tanaka, the Empire will cease hostilities. Murmurs spread across the Dominion Crown Bridge. Valeron ignored them. All Imperial fleets will stand down and allow human construction operations in the Orion Corridor. Tanaka studied him carefully. That is a significant decision. Valeron nodded. Today the Empire witnessed the true enemy. He gestured toward the shattered planet. And it is not humanity. Tanaka finally allowed herself a small smile. Then let us begin fixing the galaxy together. The Battle of the Orion Corridor ended not with victory or defeat, but with a fragile alliance. Because somewhere in the darkness beyond known space, thousands of ancient machines were beginning to awaken. And the fate of every civilization in the galaxy now depended on whether humanity and the Empire could stand together. The battle for the future of the galaxy. The destruction of Helios 47 changed everything. Across the Galactic Empire, the news spread faster than any official announcement. One moment the mining world had been alive with millions of workers and families. The next moment it was nothing more than a cloud of drifting debris. For the first time in centuries, the Empire realized something terrifying. There existed a threat greater than imperial power. And humanity had been preparing for it all along. 3 weeks after the Battle of the Orion Corridor, the situation across the galaxy had transformed. Human engineering fleets and imperial construction vessels worked side by side, assembling massive defensive bastions along key hyperspace routes. The Orion Corridor itself had become the heart of the new alliance. What had once been a battlefield was now a fortress system. Dozens of enormous platforms surrounded the corridor's central jump point. Each structure carried powerful shield generators, long-range cannons, and docking bays for thousands of ships. Grand Admiral Threx Valeron stood once again on the bridge of the Dominion Crown. But this time the atmosphere felt very different. Instead of preparing to fight humanity, Imperial officers were now coordinating with them. On the tactical display, blue markers represented the combined fleet. Human warships. Imperial dreadnoughts. Dozens of smaller vessels from allied civilizations that had answered the call after Helios 47's destruction. The galaxy had finally begun to unite. Commander Elira Tovan stepped beside Valeron. Admiral, deep space sensors have detected multiple activation events beyond the Perseus Rift. Valeron nodded slowly. How many? Elira expanded the display. Red signals appeared across the outer star map. 1. Then 5. Then 20. Finally the number stabilized. 43 machines have activated so far. Valeron exhaled quietly. 43 planetary exterminators were already moving toward the populated regions of the galaxy. And according to human predictions, hundreds more could awaken over the coming decades. But today the Alliance would face the first true test. Admiral Lyra Tanaka's flagship Horizon Spear drifted near the center of the combined fleet. Her command bridge buzzed with activity. Human and Imperial officers stood together around the central strategy table. Commander Arjun Kale pointed at the map. The nearest machine will reach the Orion Corridor in 30 minutes. Tanaka studied the approaching red marker. The machine that destroyed Helios 47 was coming. And this time, the galaxy would be ready. Grand Admiral Valoran's voice came through the communication channel. All fleets report readiness. Tanaka nodded. Good. She turned to her officers. Begin Phase 1. Across the corridor, hundreds of ships moved into formation. Imperial carriers released waves of interceptor fighters. Human cruisers positioned themselves between the defensive platforms. The massive bastions powered up their shield generators, creating overlapping layers of protection around the corridor. This was not simply a fleet. It was a war. Minutes later, long-range sensors confirmed the enemy arrival. Commander Kale spoke calmly. Contact. The ancient machine emerged from hyperspace like a silent giant. Even surrounded by thousands of warships, the construct looked terrifying. Its massive body unfolded slowly as weapon arms extended outward. The same weapon that had destroyed Helios 47 began charging once again. But this time the machine faced a prepared enemy. Tanaka spoke clearly. All units hold position. The first attack would not come from ships. Instead, the massive defense platforms activated their primary cannons. 8 enormous beams of focused energy fired simultaneously. They struck the machine's shield in perfect synchronization. For the first time, the ancient construct reacted. Its shield flickered. Commander Kale leaned forward. Shield stability dropping. The human strategy relied on coordinated energy overload. Multiple weapons striking the same shield frequency at the exact same moment. Something the ancient machines had not been designed to counter. Tanaka gave the next order. Human strike group, advance. A formation of human warships accelerated toward the machine. Unlike traditional battleships, these vessels carried specialized weapon arrays built during humanity's 70 years of preparation. At the front of the formation flew the Horizon Spear. Tanaka watched the distance close rapidly. Behind her, the Allied fleet maintained constant fire on the machine's shields. The overlapping energy barrage began pushing the ancient defenses beyond their limits. Then the machine fired. Its primary weapon unleashed a massive beam toward the defensive platforms. One of the outer bastions absorbed the impact. The structure glowed white for a moment. Then its shields collapsed. The platform exploded into fragments. Commander Kale grimaced. Defense Platform 12 destroyed. Tanaka remained calm. Maintain attack pattern. More ships moved forward. Imperial dreadnoughts unleashed heavy particle cannons. Human cruisers fired synchronized energy bursts. Slowly the machine's shield began to weaken. Valoran's voice came through the channel again. Shield integrity now below 40%. Tanaka nodded. Prepare the final weapon. Inside the Horizon Spear, a massive chamber deep within the ship began charging. The weapon humanity had developed specifically for this enemy. A quantum destabilizer. Unlike normal weapons, it targeted the internal energy networks of the ancient machines. But it only worked once their shields dropped below critical levels. Commander Kale watched the readings carefully. 30%. 25%. The battlefield blazed with constant explosions as ships on both sides took damage. 2 Imperial cruisers were destroyed. Several human fighters vanished in bright flashes. But the machine's shield continued weakening. Finally Kale spoke. 10% shield strength. Tanaka took a deep breath. All fleets, clear firing corridor. Imperial and Allied ships immediately shifted position. A narrow path opened between them. Straight toward the ancient machine. The Horizon Spear moved forward alone. Tanaka gave the final command. Fire. A brilliant blue beam erupted from the ship's core weapon. The quantum destabilizer struck the ancient machine directly in its central structure. For a moment nothing happened. Then the entire construct began shaking. Energy surged uncontrollably across its surface. Commander Kale whispered. Internal power grid collapsing. The giant machine attempted to fire again. But its weapons failed. Cracks of glowing energy spread across its hull. Then the entire structure exploded. The blast lit the Orion corridor brighter than a small star. Debris scattered across space as the ancient machine finally died. Silence followed. Across the Allied fleet, cheers erupted. For the first time, one of the extermination machines had been destroyed. Grand Admiral Valeron watched the explosion from the Dominion crown. He slowly turned toward his officers. Record this moment. Humanity had not only warned the galaxy. They had built the tools to save it. Admiral Tanaka looked at the drifting debris on her screen. 1 machine destroyed. 42 still active. And countless more still sleeping in the darkness. The war for the galaxy had only begun. But now humanity was no longer alone. Together, the Alliance would face the ancient threat. And the Age of Empires would slowly give way to something new. A united galaxy.